At this time, I'd like to call the Monday, March 13th Planning Commission meeting to order. That brings us to the first item on the agenda, which is the call to order, and roll calls next. Pitt here, Price, Hema,
Here.
Charnell, Daniels, Lundell,
Here.
Dalton.
Here.
It brings us to number 3, which is the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Dalton and a second by Mr. Hema. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to number 4, which is the approval of the minutes from the January 9th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Dalton and a second by Mr. Hema. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to public input. Citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. Before speaking, please give your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Excuse me.
Is anybody here for something other than what's on the agenda tonight? We've got the Althoff Triplex and the Audi Concept Plan. Is everybody here for one of those? All right. At this time, hearing no public input, we'll go on to the public hearing for the conditional use permit for the Althoff Triplex. At this time, I'd like to open that public hearing up.
Thank you. We'll put him to work as long as he's here working us. A little trouble with the adjustment here. We have a public hearing tonight on a request for a conditional use permit in order to build a triplex along 3rd Street North near the historic 3rd Street Bridge. This is the area proposed for redevelopment, and as you've seen in the packet, what's proposed here by Mr. and Mrs. Althoff is to remove an existing home in that location, and following the removal, construct a 3-unit triplex or a 3-unit townhome in that location. Hopefully more legible. It is, thankfully. Included with the packet is the preliminary site plan and survey, and here again are the 3 units proposed on the site, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. I have looked at the lots, I have looked at the units themselves, compared those against the zoning requirements for this particular area and find them to be in compliance. I've also mentioned in my packet that because this property is located both within the Shoreland District as well as the Cannon Recreational River District, both overlay districts, and for the newer commissioners, you'll recognize that when we're seeing development along the Cannon River or the Little Cannon River, we look at issues of shoreland, we look at whether or not the Cannon Recreational River District regulations apply, and of course we look at floodplain. In this case, with regards to shoreland and the Cannon Recreational River designation, I have reviewed the entire proposal with the Department of Natural Resources, and they're not indicating any particular concerns with regards to what's being proposed here. I've also looked at the flood protection elevation in this location, and the proposed development of these units are higher, that is, they're above the regulatory flood protection elevation, so they are outside of the floodplain district. So we'll always look at those type of regulations when we see development adjacent to, in this case, the Cannon River, but I find them in compliance. One thing that you don't see on the survey is, and this is going north towards the river in the top of the page, what's been surveyed here are really the land area where the units are going to be built. But there is additional property to the north of this between the Cannon River and this lot line that's also owned by the applicant. And that area is largely floodplain, lower land that will not be developed with structures, but will become part of the homeowners association. And I mention that not so much because of the association, but because of the fact there is considerable additional green space on developed land area that's associated with this development that you don't see, on this particular plan. I won't go into great detail, but Mr. Altoff's here tonight and can certainly answer some of your questions. But here's a elevation drawing of the proposed townhouse units. There would be 3 units, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, double car garages, units, first floor main level elevation of the 1,400 to 1,500 square feet, and then as you're going north or on the basement side of these dwellings, there will be walkouts towards the river. So pretty nice units, I would say, and this gives you kind of a flavor of what they would look like. And again, they meet the requirements of the ordinance. Here's a backside elevation, north side elevation looking towards the river. See decks here on the main level up here, and then the walkout level that I mentioned previously. In terms of the unit floor plans themselves, just real briefly, these are 2-bedroom shown in yellow, 2-bath shown in blue units, and here's a great room, laundry room, kitchen, etc. So pretty nice floor plan, I would say. And then my final comments before turning it over to the Commission for questions and the public for any additional questions or comments that they may have. One of the things we'll be looking at, if in the event that your recommendation is to proceed and the City Council accepts your recommendation, we will be looking for some additional site data from Mr. Altoff before any kind of development occurs related to stormwater drainage, grading plans, the final details on the driveway and access to the units themselves. We will be looking, the ordinance requires, we will be looking for a copy of the homeowner association documents so we can get an understanding of to make sure that they're meeting their requirements under the ordinance and the floodplain related, shoreland related provisions in terms of green space, open space, that type of thing. So we will be looking for some additional detail if this proceeds through the Planning Commission and through the City Council towards development. So with that introduction, I'll stop and pause if there's any specific questions any of the commissioners has of me, of anything I've said, or I know that Mr. Altoff is here as well, and there may be folks in the audience who have some comments as well. But first, any questions for me?
Yeah, did the DNR offer any, you said shoreline requirements? Did they offer any footage of buffering requirements?
There are minimum standards that they're looking for, and they are exceeded in this particular proposal. Mm-hmm. And really what the shoreland is really designed to do is to keep that area along the river undeveloped, keep it screened from development that may exist behind it or that's proposed behind it, not totally screened, but to be careful about vegetation.
As far as vegetation, they're saying don't mow right up to the bank, that kind of
right,
thing. Is that
right. Yep. Yeah. The intent is to not degrade the water quality in the Canna River as a result of development. So there's going to be certain assurances that they will, require for any development in the area of the shoreland.
Dave, did I hear you correctly? There are no issues with variances or setbacks or anything? This meets our code?
It meets the code. It is only subject to the conditional use permit. And what I would expect to see, Mike, in areas that are developed along the river, sometimes we will get specific conditions, requirements from the DNR to say, yes, it meets your requirements under your ordinance, but oh yeah, by the way, here's things that we require under state law, and I didn't receive any of those from the department.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Is that going to be the driveway in there? Is that going to be like a city alley, or is that just going to be just like a personal driveway or whatever?
Good question. Here, if you refer, Glenn, back to the survey, here you do see a dedicated 16-foot alley right-of-way here. There's no proposal to use that alley for access. So it would actually be a new access drive constructed by the developer for the development off of 3rd Street in this area that would serve those 3 garages. And we would also, under the ordinance, be looking for 2 parking spaces for guest use. So again, in the final plans prior to development, if the conditional use permit is approved, we will look for that and make sure that it complies with the ordinance. So right now, again, And Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the driveway is proposed to be in this location to serve these 3 garages.
There's a current driveway there that looks like it provides access for the home that is there, and also another property that's a bit further down. Is that correct?
There is an existing driveway that serves the current house on the property that will be removed, and this was all in one ownership. The property that Jim is developing and the property to the east formerly was in one ownership, but the property to the east also has its own separate access off of 2nd Street.
Okay.
So there's no requirement to have through traffic from 3rd to the property to the east.
Yeah, it just looked like the driveway's kind of connected through there.
I I'd use the overhead aerial, but it's so dark, Dan, that it's not going to be able to be seen. But I'll assure you that there is access to the property to the east from 2nd Street.
Jake, that's how you get to the house? Off 2nd Street? Yep.
There hasn't been any history of water backing up into that area from debris piling up over at that the sewer pipe area.
No, and that's I don't have my topo map with me, Bruce, but it's probably 8-10 foot elevation difference from where you're going to be building your units to heading down towards the river. Yeah. So I mean, it drops off quite a bit on the north side of the existing house.
Okay.
Bruce, according to the Stedmans, those properties in there.
Can't hear.
According to the prior property owners, those properties have not ever been wet.
Okay.
And Jim, you'll offer free gardens to anybody that wants one down there by the river?
Excuse me, could you come to the mic and repeat that?
Do the public have any questions that they'd like to bring up in regards to this conditional use permit or the project? Any other input from the commission members? Well, at this time, then, I'd like to close the public hearing for the conditional use permit for Altoff Triplex, which brings us to discussion item, Resolution 2017-2 Altoff Triplex. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion we accept.
Second it.
I've got a motion by Mr. Lundell and a second by Mr. Hema. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to discussion item 7B, ARI Concept Plan.
This recommendation is going to City Council next Tuesday. Here again, it's going to be a little bit difficult to see. Jan Adi is here tonight too, the proposed developer of a twin home project just kind of in our backyard here. If you're familiar at all with that site off of River Road, there's a number of twin homes primarily to the west of River Road, just to the south of us. And within that area, there's some additional land that Janet Adi has been talking with me about her interest in developing. And so if you look at the overhead, just in terms of acquainting where we are, we're actually, City Hall is right up in this area. So just to the south of us is the area of the proposed development that I spoke of. Here's River Road. Here's an existing gravel drive that leads towards the river to the west. And back in this area, shown in red, that's roughly a 100-foot by 100-foot area, or 10,000 square foot total, that would be split out of an existing parcel to create a development site. And again, looking in the residential business district, I mentioned in the staff report that last year, and two of you were here for this, we modified the residential business district with the addition of single and two-family homes being permitted uses in the residential business district. So we amended that ordinance last year, and this particular proposal then would be consistent with the two-family dwelling permitted land use as amended last year. Again, I've looked at it preliminarily without great detail, specifically on the project, and find that as Mr. Altoff's property, this site too is within the shoreland area. It's within the Cannon Recreational River District. There's also floodplain implications in this area, but again, this site is above the floodplain like Mr. Altoff, so we don't have a floodplain issue on that particular part of the site, but we are within the shoreland and the Cannon Recreational River District requirements. There's currently city sewer, water, and service in this area that assumedly could be extended or connected to serve this area, so it appears that there could be municipal utilities available to this site. The road is something that I think if there is going to be development there, I think we would like to pursue a little bit more research in terms of the history of that road. Several years ago, it was deemed a public street because of our ongoing maintenance as a city of that road, but to my knowledge, that's not a dedicated public right-of-way. I've seen on a survey that there is some easement rights for access, but I think if there is going to be additional development back into this area, we would certainly want to investigate that situation. To give the commissioners a little bit better idea of kind of how the proposed development sits within the existing developed area. Here again, up in this area is City Hall and the police parking area. River Road is over here. Obviously, there's been some changes in this neighborhood since this survey was done. But here's the center line of the gravel road that I spoke of. There's an indication that there is an easement. I believe it's a 20-foot easement, at least from some surveys that I've seen, that allows public access through here. But again, if we're going to have additional development, I think that's something we would want verified as part of this process with regards to public right-of-way serving this site. Here's again just a bird's eye elevation drawing of the proposed footprint of the twin home itself, and the area in blue is the proposed split or the land area, the 10,000 square feet that would be left as land area assigned to the ownership of those two units. We have existing home here, and existing construction down in this area. So this would be just an additional structure if it were to be
Dave,
approved.
on that last graphic you had, there's a parcel A. Here it's to the left of the. Is that is there anything buildable on that parcel?
No, that's a good question. This drops off quite a bit. The floodplain kind of comes through like this. So if you're out on site, Mike, that drops off again 8 feet or more down to the river. So that is not developable. If there was going to be any development in this area, this is probably the most feasible of the sites that exist. And then finally, again, I think just conceptually, here's kind of a view of the concept that Janet has submitted to us. Here again, a twin home with front-loaded double garages, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, great room, garage, kitchen, etc. So somewhat similar in terms of the concept with regards to it being a twin home development. So again, tonight, especially for the new members, this is a concept plan review. We offer this opportunity up to folks. We actually had Jim Altoff in here previously. We offer this up as a possible time frame for folks interested in development coming and having a conversation with you. There's no commitment by either party at this point, but just an opportunity to have some conversation, a dialogue with someone who's interested in doing some development. I've told Janet this, so I'm not speaking out of school. This will not be a simple development. I think to split a lot in this way And to deal with utilities and get the street resolved is not necessarily a simple process, but I think if she decides to go ahead and she wants to pursue this, she can certainly do that as a conditional use permit process and then come ultimately to a public hearing before the group. But tonight, the floor is all Janet's and yours, and I'll stand ready to answer any questions if there are some.
You described it pretty much exactly what I would say. So it's just looking at purchasing the property and wanted to do something with it, so,
Do you own property over there now?
yes.
So this oddity that's on this map is
Yeah.
you? Okay.
Yes,
Is there sewer and water over there already?
yes.
There is.
Yes, and it shows the manholes on this one, you know, exactly. Well, you can see them where they end at the driveway of Jensen's.
Right. And the property into the woods there down below is not it's not,
No.
we're not able to develop that because it's all floodplain. Is that correct?
No. The total is like 2.93 acres is with that, the house and the twin home to the river.
Yeah, the actual, and I don't have I do but not here, but what Janet's saying is the lot that's being split kind of goes like this, north-south, and then over to the river and back around. And it's a little under 3 acres.
Yeah.
So about 10,000 square feet or so would be carved out of that 3-acre parcel for the twin home.
Yeah.
So that's really, most of it is actually just floodplain then.
Correct. Yep.
So Dave, you mentioned some possible difficulties with utilities. Would that be, I guess, can you elaborate on that a little bit? I see, because I see the city services up to Jensen's, and I don't know anything about it, but it seems like it'd be easy to shoot it from there to this house.
Well,
But
it currently goes to this house here, to Phil Wanty's.
So
I
if
don't know for certain if there's difficulties, because you're correct, the sewer and water service is on the east edge of the proposed development site. I don't know the capacity, I don't know the age,
Okay.
all those things would need to be evaluated.
Okay.
But it is it's in the neighborhood.
Sure.
So it's not like it's gotta go a block or 2 or 3 to get to it.
I guess one of the concerns I might have would be the road leading into it. I think the city, I don't know if it's an official policy, but I think we like to have asphalt roads. I'm not sure we have too many gravel roads in town anymore.
Correct.
So I'm wondering how that might be addressed.
Correct, and I think this would be an issue that at some point, if Janet decides to go ahead, we would maybe choose to have a conversation with the Public Works Commission about that, because you're exactly right, is when we've looked at all new developments, and this is kind of an in-betweener, but when we've looked at all new developments, it's always been on the policy of the council that they will be urban streets, municipal streets, typically 32-foot wide curb and gutter streets. Here, there's an existing access gravel street that goes in to serve the area as it exists today. This would be an additional unit served by that gravel access drive, and the question will be, is this something that the city wants to approve? Are there special conditions here? Are there unique conditions here? Is there a reason to have an exception to that policy? So it's a question.
Then it looks like there's some other buildings on that property. Would you tear them down, or are they gonna stay?
Well, the house would be minimally at least 35 feet away from the twin home area, but there's a garage that definitely would be removed.
Okay, yeah, it's kinda right in the corner there.
Yep,
They refer to this one. That's an existing house would stay.
Okay.
That would stay. What isn't shown here is your property, because it's
Yep.
an older survey, but those are down here. So of this one, there's
a garage,
a garage and a
shed back.
shed. So
That would both leave.
those would be removed.
So you haven't talked to the city engineer on this yet?
No.
Oh. So that's got to be done.
Yeah, when Jan and I talked about this, I just felt since the timing was right, this was
Yeah.
a good
Oh, yeah.
opportunity to come and have a conversation.
yeah.
But there will be a lot more detail that's gonna
Yeah.
have to be put together, like Mr. Altoff did for his project, in order to get to
Yeah.
the public hearing stage.
Well, I sure like the concept. Anytime we can bring a new building
Yeah.
into town, I think it's worth doing
It's appealing
doing everything we
location,
can to
you
make
know,
it
and
work, so.
It's a country house in the city.
Sure.
You got all the woods and takes advantage of the river, which is one of our big assets here, so. Yeah.
And it may be that, as I mentioned with the Altoff proposal, the additional green space right-of-way to the north of the triplex that he's building, that's common area, that we're able to take advantage of that for meeting the regulations. And maybe this is something here too where, you know, the property over here, if need be, to meet standards, and maybe there's gonna have to be a relationship with you and the current owner, if this is gonna be divided, to work those sorts of things out too. Because, you know, the lower land's not gonna be developed, but if it's necessary in order to make a project like this work, it's just something we'll have to talk about.
Sure.
You'll have to talk to the owner.
So what do we need to do?
Really nothing
Just-
at this point is, if you've got questions or comments, or if you see something here that you really like or you really don't like.
Well, the one thing that I did notice about the way the plan is kind of organized is the way that the twin home is structured. I don't know if you'd be really maximizing your view, actually. It's almost like if you rode that east side with some kind of a driveway there with almost a left turn into the garage areas, you'd have two, I guess, sites where you'd have decks that you could have out back or something that would overlook that floodplain instead of this house that's to the south side there.
Well, on the back side of the rear elevation of the twin home,
Yeah.
that actually faces Hannah's Bend, so I mean.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was
Yeah, so
talking
that's
about,
all
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, then I guess I'm either looking at it wrong or
This would actually be the Riverside West
sure.
view, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that would make the most sense.
And this would be the east front towards the
Yeah.
the road.
gravel road.
Not too many windows there.
Yeah,
So.
yep,
So you drive right into the.
yep.
Yep.
And then on the floor plan, Dan, you know, they've got covered porch and great room that actually faces west. So
Right.
that's facing towards the river.
Right, that would, I just, for some reason, I thought the orientation was somehow looking at the one house, and
Oh, no.
I thought, well, you know, maybe there's a better way.
Good. Well, I can't wait to see what you come back with.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just getting night adapted there.
That brings us to number 8, which is Planning Commission member comments. Anyone on the commission have any comments? Either about what was on here or something else? Hearing none, that brings us to number 9, which is adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I've got a motion by Mr. Dalton and a second by Mr. Lindell. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the